Joining us tonight. We are live with Michael Malcolm, cannabis industry consultant. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. I want you to go ahead and introduce yourself, give our audience a little bit of background into who you are and the work that you do.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Michael Malcolm, born and raised here in Chicago. I've been working as a realtor. I've been working in the real estate industry really since I was out of high school. So over the last 20 years, I've been an at properties realtor since 2012. And I've been working in the cannabis industry as a consultant really for the last 3 years. I consult with different companies and brands across the country on everything from content creation to product development to community engagement and outreach. I also am the founder of the Weed Travel Food brand, where I create content and for a lot of different companies, both in the cannabis industry, the food industry, and the hospitality industry. I also am a partner in a cannabis brand out of California, where my partners have distribution, manufacturing, and delivery licenses, and they are based in LA. And I am also an adjunct professor at Olive Harvey College, where I teach cannabis marketing and branding. I'm also a member of several advocacy groups like Chicago Normal, Illinois Cannabis Equity Coalition, and the National Association of, what is it? National Association of Cannabis somebodies. I can't even think of all the names now, but I'm a member of several cannabis industry associations as well and advocacy groups across the country.
That's great. That's a pretty wide range of things that you're involved in.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's one of the great things about the industry is that it's brand new, so to speak, on the legal side. So now is the time for people who are interested in getting in to find their niches and find those opportunities because they're definitely out there.
Okay. No, that sounds good. So to piggyback off of what you just said, when Illinois passed the law legalizing the sale of recreational cannabis, it created a huge opportunity, right? To kind of a new business. They had a chance to ensure diversity and to right some of the wrongs, right, that have happened in the Black and Brown community where there have been, a lot of convictions for individuals for the sale of marijuana or
Sure,
possession of marijuana.
sure.
So let's talk about that. After more than a year, there's still no majority Black owned dispensary. And has that money actually trickled into the communities that have been, affected?
Yeah, so the short answer is no. there's no there's no black owned dispensaries, there's no black owned brands, no black owned products, there's no black owned processors in the industry. Illinois is completely white. I leaked some insider information a couple of months ago that picked up and got a little bit of traction, where it showed that over 200 over 220 of the people that are in the industry, 200 and over 220 are white, 12 are Middle Eastern or Asian. That's the way that the report labeled them. Two were Hispanic or Latino, and one was Black. And what that means is, again, that doesn't mean that one Black person owns a dispensary or owns a cultivation. It means they have a piece. They have some ownership. That doesn't mean they are not majority owners of anything. So yeah, we're severely lacking on all counts. One of the reasons why I know this so well is in my intro, I forgot to leave out. I'm also a social equity applicant here in Illinois, and I currently have 10 dispensary license applications that I'm waiting to hear back from the state on. So I'm in the thick of it when it comes to the licensing process and just everything that has happened. Um, yeah, there's been a lot of media attention about that. I know you and I, we spoke about this before about me being in the Chicago Sun Times one of the things that I was in the Chicago Sun-Times was about my efforts getting into the industry. But actually, one of the ways that I got into the Chicago Sun-Times was about pointing out some of the hypocrisies that the state and the city of Chicago were doing that actually helped people that they claimed they wanted to help. And one of the clear examples of that I mean is by the way I actually got into the newspaper in the first place was that in the fall of 2019, the city of Chicago had a city zoning meeting to discuss where they were going to allow these adult use dispensaries to be located once they gave out the licenses. And one of the biggest issues that I had was that the city of Chicago at the time was saying that they weren't going to allow these dispensaries to be in downtown Chicago. They only wanted them to be in the neighborhoods. They didn't want them to be in a downtown area. Now, the problem with that is that when they were talking about giving these licenses out to people, they weren't only talking about social equity applicants. At the time, they were also determining where they were going to allow the existing operators to put their secondary locations. Mm-hmm. So going back just a little bit, cannabis was legalized for medical use in Illinois, I believe in 2015. So it's been a very small group of companies that have been allowed to get in. The hurdles to get into the industry and the medical side were so high, like you had to have the application fees were $50,000 per. Non-refundable, $50,000 just to apply. You had to have $250,000 in an account that you were not planning to use for operational costs. You just have to show that you had $250,000 in the bank that you weren't planning on doing anything with, right? So those were some of the hurdles why there's almost no Black ownership in Illinois right now. Fast forward to 2019, when they put out the social equity licenses, they also allowed the existing operators to have another location. So every existing dispensary got a second location. Again, the state is just giving the existing operators this extra business, right? And so one of the things that I saw again at the time was that they were saying that they weren't going to allow these multi-billion-dollar companies to go downtown. They wanted to force them into the neighborhoods like Bronzeville or Hyde Park or, all these other neighborhoods. And so one of the issues that I saw with that as someone who wanted to apply for licenses is that, and also being a realtor, I know that just from reading the laws that you can't put a dispensary anywhere, right? You can only put a dispensary in a certain area, right? Because they can't be too close to a school. They can't be too close to a nursery. They can't be too close to another dispensary. So what I saw was that the state and the city were basically allowing these multi-billion-dollar companies to come up and buy up prime real estate in our neighborhoods. Instead of spending the millions of dollars that these companies already have allocated for their real estate acquisitions, they already have this money allocated to buy in the Gold Coast, to buy on Michigan Avenue, because that's where they want to be anyway. Right? These multi-billion-dollar companies, they don't want to be in the hood. Right? They want to be in River North. They want to be on Michigan Avenue. So I went to the meeting, the very first meeting that they had at Malcolm X College, and I listened to the city of Chicago give their reasons as to why they didn't want these companies to be downtown. And the reasons that they were given just didn't make any sense to me. One was that they said, well, it's going to cause congestion because there are going to be lines. Another reason was that they wanted to give jobs they wanted to make sure that minorities had opportunities for jobs. That was the reason for not allowing them, for saying that they didn't want them to be downtown. They wanted it to be easier for people in these neighborhoods to access their place of employment, right? So I raised my hand in front of everybody. It was cameras, everything there. And I just spoke from the heart, and I just basically told them what they said doesn't make any sense. For one, this is Chicago. right? And anybody has been downtown, you know, people line up downtown for everything. People line
Yeah,
up for
true.
Garrett's popcorn, people line up for donuts, people line up for ice cream. I'm a foodie. Trust me, I know this. I have been in lines for ice cream in downtown
Right.
Chicago, right? People line up for Jordans, people line up for iPhones, people line up for all type of stuff downtown, right? And so the idea that people are going to line up to buy cannabis is shouldn't be a big deal, right? Because people line up for everything. And then the other thing is that I also felt like just that little bit, it also hurt kind of like with the stigma of cannabis, as if it's something that was going to hurt a neighborhood. So like all of a sudden, you know, I felt like the city was saying all these druggies are going to come downtown and start like, I don't know if they thought there was going to be like a new Skid Row or something. People just be laid out all over the sidewalk because they
Right,
smoking
right.
weed. Like, I don't know what the city thought, but it didn't make any sense. And then my biggest pet peeve with that with that judgment that the city was making was also that, again, if they were to allow these multi-billion-dollar companies to come into Hyde Park or Bronzeville, these companies already have the money. They're going to buy up all of the prime real estate where someone like myself who wants to operate would want to buy and want to operate at. And that was my thing with the city. The city was looking at looking at us. I'm speaking to us as
Mhm,
minorities
mhm.
in Chicago and people that come from these areas and these neighborhoods, these disproportionately affected areas is what they actually call them now.
Right.
And they are looking as if all these people that are in these areas want to work for these people, right? Not as if they want to own their own businesses themselves. And I take offense to that. I don't want to work
Right,
for these people,
right,
right? I don't want to
right.
work for them. I want to run and own my own businesses in the industry. And so basically, I told the city that, and it was well received. It was well received. People seem to appreciate it. And then after the meeting, I was interviewed by the Chicago Sun-Times. That was the very first time that I was in the newspaper. It was a smaller
Mhm.
article. And then they did a follow-up on me about a month later. And I didn't know what it was going to be, but it ended up being the cover story on the Chicago Sun-Times. That was December 23rd, 2019. Yeah, they didn't even tell me it was going to be the cover story. They just say, hey, we want to take some pictures of you, and we got a couple more questions. And so I did that. And so yeah, so it was really great. Being able to get that little bit of publicity was really great, just because it gave me an opportunity to share that point of view more. And I think that the city received my message because they changed that law. They reversed it, and then they allowed the companies to go downtown. Because again, I can't afford to build out a brand new dispensary on Michigan Avenue or on the Gold Coast, even if you were to allow me to do so. But these companies, they have the money to do it, and they are more than willing to spend it. So let them spend their money downtown and give us our neighborhoods. That was my main sentiment.
Okay, so do you think that if, people of color were able to
Mm.
open dispensaries in their neighborhood, that it would, um, you know, help the neighborhoods financially?
1000%. Yes. Uh, Well, yes, as long as the state and the city do the right thing. I know one of the things that we were talking about was about have the communities that were identified as being affected by the war on drugs, have they benefited from the revenue that has been brought in from the taxes?
Right.
And the short answer to that is not yet. I know that there's a lot of things that are being worked on, like the R3 grant. I know that those were just awarded to a couple of organizations. Some I'm familiar with, and I believe that they will do good things. But it took them over a year to award that money. I mean, they literally just got awarded a couple of weeks ago. And so as of yet, no one yet has benefited from it. So, one of the things that I'm really looking at to see once they award these licenses. I know myself, part of my application was that I had to have a community engagement, some type of community engagement as part of my application. Like, what am I going to be doing for the communities that I operate in? And what's my goal? And so that's one thing I'm really looking forward to seeing, that once these new licenses get issued, these people that all had to come up with plans to help these communities that they're going to operate in? Do they actually live up to what they say they're going to do? And then the second part to that is, does the state hold them accountable? So those are some of the biggest issues that, I mean, it's easy to talk a good talk to get that license, but do you actually do what you say you're going to do with the money once you make it? And then does the state hold you accountable and make sure that you are doing some of the things that you say that you're going to do? One of the most disheartening things about the legal cannabis industry I see, especially here in Illinois, is that so many of these large multi-state operators are all talk about what they want to do for the industry. And I mean, I guess it's better than some of the other ones who just don't make any promises at all and just say they don't care. They're just going to make the money and keep it moving. I honestly don't know which one is worse, the people that lie to me or the people who have no shame in showing that they are completely indifferent to the issues. But either way, you know, I'm really looking forward to see what's going to happen, but it's definitely a to be determined.
Okay, so let me ask you this: you have a cannabis conviction,
I
right?
do.
And so, how has that impacted you in your employment, or just in life in general? Has that affected you trying to get your licensing? Has that affected you kind of as a realtor? What impact has that had, and why? I guess the other question is, why have you not had that expunged, or have you?
That's a great question. So you know, I thought about this a lot, especially as I've been going through the process, because I've been asked a few times how that conviction hurt me. And the truth is, I really don't even know how much it has hurt me. Because I got that conviction back in 2003, I believe it was. So I was right around 20 years old, 21 years old, something like that. And I can just think about all the different jobs that I've applied for over these years. And they don't necessarily always tell you that you don't get the job because you have a cannabis conviction on your record. So they just say, oh, we went with someone else. You know, so I can't think of the countless amount of jobs that I've applied for the years that I haven't gotten because of that. One of the things that I have been working in real estate since I was out of high school. And even when I was in college, I always had like this streak of entrepreneurship. So it didn't take long for me to realize that I wanted to make my own way in this world, so to speak. And so I've been self-employed really on and off for the past 20 years. I mean, I've been self-employed more than I've been employed, I should say. So, um, you know, it was one of those things where I know it has definitely affected me. Um, but I took it upon myself very early in life that I wasn't going to let anything stop me from doing what I was going to do, even the negative, you know, cannabis convictions that I had on my record or whatever. Like I just I wasn't going to let that stop me. Great, thankfully, you know, I got into real estate early, and my family got me into real estate, and I learned the industry there, and then took what I learned and joined at properties a few years later. Thankfully, none of them do background checks apparently, because that that wasn't a big deal to anyone. But more importantly, you know, I think like most places, my work spoke for itself, and my work ethic and my character spoke for itself. So when I decided to go into the cannabis industry, not only did people not really blink an eye of it, everybody really encouraged me to do so, but they were actually shocked. Many of them were actually shocked to find out that I had a conviction or
Mm.
that I even smoke weed. I mean, I had a lot of business colleagues that reached out to me after I was on the cover of the Chicago Sun Times, and they're like, Mike, you smoke weed? Like, Mike, you smoke weed? Like, one was a real estate agent that I had just done a deal with like 2 weeks prior, and he had no idea. And he was a good buddy of mine, but I don't talk cannabis in real estate, right? I just
Right.
do my job, and you know, I try to be as professional as I can, and you know, build great relationships. So thankfully, I can say it's a little bit of a mixed bag. I really can't pinpoint one exact thing where that conviction has stopped me, but I'm sure just in the way that our systems are set up, like I said, there's a lot of things I'm sure that we get excluded from, and we have no idea why. Like I
Right.
said, I can think of a ton of jobs I applied for over the years that I didn't get. So I can't pinpoint and say it was because of cannabis.
Okay. So with so much, emphasis on decriminalizing marijuana, why do you think Black and brown people specifically are left behind?
Oh, this is a great one. Okay, so I'm going to say something a little controversial. So let me bear with me as I get through these thoughts. Right. Um, One of the biggest issues with the civil rights movement is that the remedy could not be race specific, right? So when you think about civil rights, everyone benefited from our civil rights movement, from the Black people's civil rights movement, right? Women, the LGBTQ community, Hispanics, Latinos, immigrants in general, right? Handicapped people, a lot of people benefited from our civil rights movement. And it's a good thing. But at the same time, when we think about issues now, whether it be civil rights and things that we've seen like racial injustice in the past, or we look to the cannabis industry now, and we're trying to figure out how do we have real equity in the industry? How do we get Black people in? The biggest problem is that the same is that the same um the same effort that was put into keeping us locked in jail is not being into putting us into positions of power, right? And the reason for that is because the reasons that we were put in jail or put into servitude, if you go back to the civil rights issues, the reason why we couldn't eat at certain lunch counters or we couldn't buy properties in certain neighborhoods was because of race. But that's not the same thing that they use to get us into the cannabis industry now. You can't get a license in the cannabis industry because you are Black, right? It has to be because you come from a certain area, right? You can't, even though, right, you might have been racially profiled, which is why you have the criminal arrest record, right? It's a racial thing why you have a problem, right? But the race cannot be a part of the solution. So to me, that's one of the biggest issues. And I honestly do not know how there will ever be true equity in the industry if it's not addressed by race. Now, the reason why it can't be is because it's federally illegal, right? You can't do anything off the basis of race. You cannot give someone a license because of race. You cannot exclude them from operating in the industry because of race. But again, if we were to think about it, everything that, whether we're talking about, again, Jim Crow laws or social equity imbalances in the cannabis industry, they all come down to race. So there's always going to be a huge gap of what we want to do, what's actually possible, and what's actually being done, because the state cannot fix the problems by addressing them the same way they were caused, if that makes sense. Now, I know some people are not going to like that, but it's the truth. You're on mute.
So, what truly needs to happen in order for there to be real change and equity, given that our communities, Black and brown, have been so disproportionately affected by these cannabis convictions?
Sure. I think that the one thing that the state needs to do, and I wrestled with this a lot, just because again I work with different operators in different states, all trying to figure out the same thing, right? How to make the industry more equitable, and people who really mean well by doing it. I mean, they work for some of these large companies, but they really want to see it happen. Um, I think one of the biggest things that Illinois did to create this disparity is that, one, they limited the licenses so much by only saying that they were going to only issue 75 licenses. Terrible idea. I like what Oklahoma did, where they just made the licenses cheap for everyone, and then kind of let the free market decide. Now, there's a lot of issues with that as well. But what you don't have is a lot of people complaining because they can't even get in the game. Maybe they don't have the resources once they do get in. Maybe they figure out that they're over their head. Maybe they realize that they're not well financed enough, or they don't have enough expertise, or they just don't have the willpower or the know-how to be successful in the industry. Here in Illinois, we don't even like it's a crapshoot. Right? You don't even have the opportunity to show your worth or to prove whether or not you belong, because it's so hard to get in. One of the other main issues that, I laugh every time the state of Illinois says that they did their best. I've been on with a couple of legislators, and they love to talk about how hard they tried to make this an equitable industry here in Illinois. But one of the first things that I saw, that as soon as I saw it, I said the state I'm speaking of, completely destroyed the social equity industry in Illinois before it ever got off the ground. And what they did was they issued the applications for the dispensaries before they issued the applications for the craft grow. That is a huge, huge, huge mistake that the state of Illinois did, that is going to ensure that there is no real equity in this state, right? And the reason why is because, think about it like this, right? The current operators in Illinois in 2020, they made over $1 billion in revenue, right? They all have their own cultivation, their own processing, and their own retail. They are what we call fully vertically integrated, right? From seed to sale, they control everything, right? If the state were to give me my licenses tomorrow, hope they do, all 10 of them, please, okay? If they were to give me my license tomorrow, right? If they were to give me my license tomorrow, all I have is a building. All I have is a store. I still am dependent on the same multi-billion-dollar companies to supply me. Without that supply, I am nothing. And what I've learned from traveling around the country and seeing this play out in other states that have, a little bit further down the road in the process, is that's what happens, right? They issue social equity licenses, retail to minorities, right? To get them in and quiet them up. And then those people have no way to stock their shelves. Why? Because the current operators, why would they cut me in on their profits? These are multi-billion-dollar publicly traded companies. They have zero incentive to help us. Absolutely none. They are beholden to their stockholders, right? Not to social equity applicants. They do not care whether or not our businesses succeed or not. So what is going to happen, I'm going to call it here right now, is you're going to see licenses get issued in Illinois. And then you're going to start hearing about these people once they get the ones that actually do get their shops open, you're going to start hearing about them complaining about supply, how they don't have an adequate supply. And then what will happen, what I've seen in other states, is then these multi-billion-dollar corporations come in and say, hey, looks like you have a problem keeping your doors open and keeping product on shelf. How about we just buy you out for $1 million, more money than a social equity applicant in most cases has ever seen at one time, right? Or we'll give you $2 million. Oh, what? $3 million. Fine, whatever, right? Give you $3 million, tell you to kick rocks, and we'll buy your store, right? That is the fate of Illinois by them not issuing craft grow licenses, because without independent growers, right, independent social equity growers controlling the supply, the social equity retailers have no real chance of any equity, because they're always going to be dependent on the large corporations. So that's a problem. That's a huge problem. And it's actually, and I've been very upfront and open talking about this. I have a joint venture with one of these large multi-state operators. And I've told them, and I've told, when I've talked through some public speaking in the past, I've told people before, the reason that I partnered with that company is because I saw it in the bill. I saw that I was going to be dependent on them or one of the other ones for a supply. So me personally, I'd rather cut my deal up front. I'd rather cut my deal up front and say, hey, let's go after these licenses together. You know, I'll own the company, you supply me, and we make money together, versus me get a license and now I'm begging you for help. I'm begging for a supply. Um, that's a huge, huge, huge issue. And one of the reasons why I honestly, again, hate to be a downer, I got I don't have high hopes for the Illinois industry, at least I would say probably in the next 3 to 5 years. It's probably going to be, even if they were to start issuing licenses for retail dispensaries this summer, which I think they're going to do, they still have to get craft grow. You know, even as a dispensary applicant, if I had my choice, I would push craft grow to the front of the line versus pushing my license out. Even with my partnership and everything, that is the only way that social equity applicants who are not already partnered with the MSO like I am, that's the only way they stand a chance, is for craft grow to get out there as soon as possible. And then again, think about it. If craft grow licenses get issued this summer, it's going to take them 6 months just to do build out. Just to build out the space. They got to order all the equipment. Most of these people have not bought the real estate, so they got to buy the real estate. They got to order the equipment. They got to clean it out. They got to build the grow rooms, and then they have to actually grow the product, right? This is produce, right? It's not like, oh, I'm gonna flip the switch and then it's gonna be bud there tomorrow for me to sell. No, it has to grow. You're talking 60, 70 days to grow, then it has to be cured, then it has to be, you know what I mean? There's so many steps we have to do before social equity applicants can really get their own product on market. All we're going to be doing is selling products for these multi-billion-dollar companies. And it's sad, but that's the truth, at least for the next year or two. I don't see any social equity craft grow products on, definitely not in 2021. And I'd be extremely surprised to see some, because you got to think the same things that are holding up the dispensary licenses are going to be holding up the craft grow. There's going to be lawsuits. They haven't even started that stuff yet, right? So I'd be extremely surprised to see any craft grow, even if they were to give out dispensary licenses next month, which is what I'm hearing. I do not expect to see any craft grow, any social equity products, true social equity products on the shelves until 2022. Maybe even 2023 at the earliest.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned I think you said it was the R3 grant.
Mm-hmm.
What is that supposed to do to help maybe close the generational gap, or, you know, these inequities?
Yeah. So the R3 grant, and you know, I apologize. I read up on them months ago, and I haven't looked at them recently. I just saw a few were issued, like I said, to a couple of organizations I'm familiar with. But the R3 grant basically takes the taxes, a portion of the taxes that were made through the recreational sales, or I like to say adult use sales of cannabis, and it takes the money, and there's a fund that was created, and last I checked, it was over $70 million in that fund, and then the state was going to issue those funds to different organizations that had plans to do different community revitalization projects, things like that, basically community programs and community projects. It's a good thought, but on another note, I have a little bit, this might be your question, but I got a little bit of problem with the states across the country, Illinois included, of course, but states across the country thinking that cannabis is the fix all to solve all these problems that they have neglected for decades, right? They can't, now all of a sudden they have this new industry and now they're going to tax it to death, right? To make up for the things that they neglected. And then on the other thing, I know this as a real estate agent, when we talk about reparations, you know, there's a lot of, some people call it these like reparations. I know Evanston has this thing where they're going to use the taxes from cannabis for reparations. Now, Yeah, put my realtor hat on real quick. I'm a real estate agent. I have been in real estate for over 20 years. The real estate industry has screwed black and brown people over way more than the cannabis industry or the war on drugs. I know the war on drugs is a hot issue. People don't realize that the the problems that were caused when we think about things like segregation, the first thing that comes to mind is where people could sit on the bus, what water fountain they could drink out of, or what counter they could eat their lunch at. But there's a way bigger issue. There's a way bigger problem that segregation called that a lot of people don't pay attention to, and that is the real estate. The real estate was not only what how the federal government and state governments and city governments kept black and brown people down by creating slums, creating different zoning ordinances where they put um, chemical plants and all this stuff into black neighborhoods. They had terrible piping systems. Even now, Illinois and Chicago has some of the largest networks of lead piping in the country. We have all these issues in our neighborhoods, and a lot of that was government is because of government sanctioned segregation. It's not only because of the war on drugs, right? Segregation has a lot to do with it. So I feel, as a realtor, I feel that the real estate industry has a huge part in play. If we're going to start talking about reparations and things like that, I think there's a lot of industries besides cannabis that need to pay their fair share. And that includes the gun industry, the real estate industry, the alcohol industry, and the cannabis industry.
Mm-hmm. So how would you say if those industries were to give back or reinvest in the communities that have been impacted, how would that benefit us? Like, where would we reinvest that money?
Yeah, number one, I would say definitely education. As someone that has, I grew up on the south side of Chicago. I went to a small Catholic school on 112th and Bishop called Holy Name of Mary. I was also, I went there all through grade school. During my time there, I also was accepted into an enrichment program at the Latin School of Chicago on North Avenue in Clark. Anybody knows the Latin School of Chicago? It's a private school. It's one of the most expensive schools,
Yes.
probably in the country. It's about 30,000 just to send your preschool, your
Right.
preschool kid.
Exactly. Junior
Yeah.
preschool. Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah, it's about $30,000, right?
Right.
Um, I saw the difference. I recognized at a young age the difference that those privates, the education that the people in the private schools got versus my own private school. Right, it was a Catholic school, and I thought, a lot of times, oh, Catholic school, you're going to get such a great education. Not as much as those private schools. Not as much as they did. I mean, the teaching was, but the training and the materials that they had were next level. And I went to Latin 6 through my freshman years as an enrichment. So I was going to my regular school and I was going to Latin at the same time. So I really got a good sense of the differences. So I would definitely say starting with education is a big thing. But the other part of that is I would add real estate onto that. One of the biggest things that I have looked at when I did my brief overview of some of the plans for the R3 program was that it was a heavy, they were leaning heavily on teaching people about the cannabis industry, which I have no problem with. But it's a great industry to be in, but everyone doesn't need every child in the neighborhood in the hood doesn't need to know how to grow weed. Every child in the neighborhood doesn't need to know how to sell weed. One of the things that I like to talk about a lot when I teach my class at Olive Harvey is about all the different opportunities that open up because of the cannabis industry, like marketing and branding, right? If you can learn how to market and brand, I took my expertise learning how to market and brand real estate and I applied that to cannabis. Now, I had some knowledge of cannabis before I did that, so it was authentic to me. But I just think that there's a lot of opportunities out there. And again, we can put this under the education cap, but I think there's a lot of opportunities out there for people in these neighborhoods to get into the cannabis industry, but a lot of other industries as well. And I just hope that when this money starts getting issued out here, that is not so focused on teaching kids how to grow weed. Like there's a lot of opportunity out here, everything from construction. A friend of mine who started in cannabis on the construction side. He started in construction and now he's head of compliance, right? He doesn't actually grow or actually sell the weed, right? What he knows are the laws in each state where his company operates in. He's basically their attorney. Right.
Right.
Those type of skills are what people need to be learning. It's not so much weed specific, right? People need to learn legislation, and people need to learn how to get in contact with their state senators or their congressmen, or those type of things, their aldermen, things like that, and get involved in that way. So that's one of the things I'm really hoping to see this money comes. Other than that, I'm really hoping that more than anything, one of the things I can't forget about is they need to get these people out of prison. I read so many stories. I know that I don't know if that's directly going to come from the funds that this industry generates, but as I'm brainstorming right now as we're speaking, I would like to see not only those people get out of prison, people who are locked up for cannabis, and I would like to see them being basically not rewarded, but given something so that they can get back on their feet, and so that they don't return to prison, because they were locked up for weed as well. Like they need to get these people out of jail, and then they need to give them a opportunity to start anew, whether that's in the cannabis industry or any other industry they want to be a part of.
That makes sense. So you think that they take some of the money to reinvest it in those that are locked up to reduce recidivism, right?
Yes, there are a lot of people locked up. Oh, there's a lot of people locked up. And some of these stories, I'm not gonna go into them right now, but I've read a lot of them. They're heartbreaking. Right. I just recently learned about a young lady in Texas, I believe, who had went to jail on a petty crime, like theft or something like that. Got out of jail, was on probation, smoked some weed. She went and told her parole officer when they were going to make her do a urine test, a drop. And she said, I'm going to be honest with you. I smoked some weed. I just want to be frank with you. She never went back home. She got 5 years in jail. 5 years. 5 years for smoking a joint and being honest about it at that. Like she didn't even, because once she told her parole officer that, they didn't even drop her. They just sent her right to jail for 5 years.
Wow.
They didn't even drop her. I was like, yo, I would have took my chances. Right. Imagine that. Imagine that. Right. Imagine that. So, and it enrages me now when I see these companies and these people at the top of these companies who have, a lot of these people, their parents own restaurants and all this stuff like that. They never was in any real trouble. They make making billions of dollars off of a product that we as a culture popularize, that we make cool, and that they still need us to this day to help them sell. They need us to this day to help us sell it, because Black sells. Black is cool. Our culture sells. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about cars, or you're talking about clothes or music or television, movies. Black people sell products. Black people push the culture in all these different industries. And so what I'm starting to see is them nip and try to get us to get involved as much as they can. They want Black faces to push their products. And so I just hope that anybody listening to this is make sure you get what you're worth. right? And don't let these people, I talk to so many people around the country who are just so excited to have an opportunity in the industry. They put up with a whole lot. And this is not just black, white, male, female. I hear it every day on everything down from the bud tenders and the trimmers to C-suite. I know people and from everywhere in between. And the stories are often the same, where they're not appreciated. Mostly they're taken advantage of. And in my estimate, I really feel like the real estate industry in 2021 and 2020 reminds me a whole lot of the real estate industry in 2003, 2004, the wild, wild west where any and everything goes. You know, one thing I'm really hoping to see that the state of Illinois does, and I've talked to some people about this, is create some type of ethics, a continuing education, like almost in the same way that realtors have to do. Realtors, to maintain my license, every 2 years, I have to take CE courses. One of those courses that is mandatory that I take is ethics, right? And that's one thing that I'm seeing lacking so much in the cannabis industry, the lack of ethics, right? These are people that, again, they were white collar, suit and tie guys, and now they get into the cannabis industry and now they want to act like real mobsters. It's like, bro, that is not your life. It's so not your life. But now all of a sudden they think they like real gangsters or something. Like,
Right.
I'm like,
Right.
what makes them? I have received some of the most ridiculous just emails from some of these people who I talked to and like negotiated for. And I'm like, I can't believe they put that in the email. Like, like just
Right.
stupid. So I'm hoping a lot of these people get held accountable, but I put a lot of that on the state. The state has to hold these people accountable, because if not, this industry is going to go just haywire. And the bad part about it is that what that means is not only will you not have equity in the industry on the business end, you will also have a low quality product for the consumers, because ethics isn't always about whether or not people are getting their fair share, right, in business. It also means, what are they doing to the products, and is that safe for the public, right? Because the public, again, cannabis is one of these things where people know about weed. They know what weed is. So you either like it or you don't, right? But even the most adamant stoner doesn't always know the process that it goes from seed to sale, right? They know it's grown, but they have no idea what type of food is put in it. They don't have no idea what type of fertilizers are put in it. They don't have any idea what remediation is. I'm sure your audience may not even know what that word is. I hope people go look and see what that word means, remediation, when it comes to cannabis. That is being done here in Illinois. I know that for a fact. And that's basically, real briefly, is when, let's say, this product has to be tested to make sure that the quality is there. And so they send the cannabis, the flower, off to labs to get it tested. Well, the test is going to test for things like mold, bacteria. So there's several things that these companies here in Illinois are doing to the products to make sure that they pass those tests, so that they don't have to throw out the product. These include things like spraying them down with can't think of the word right now, but basically like an X-ray to kill bacteria and mold. They spray some of the plants with things to kill the mold. So imagine they spraying that, it kills the mold, so it passed the test. But is that good for you to smoke and put in your lungs? Probably not. But they're not telling you that they're doing that, right? And that's what I mean when I say ethics. It's not always about who's making the money. It's what are you doing to the product, and is that safe for the consumer? Sorry, I got on my little soapbox there. You on mute again.
Yeah,
Sorry, I
out
got on
loud. No, that's okay.
my little soapbox right there.
No, but that makes sense. So, there's clearly a lot of opportunity to work in the industry, and it's not just selling weed, right? It's not even promoting the sale of weed. And I think, to your point, as you're saying, take some of this money, reinvest it in education, teach the kids not just about selling weed or growing weed, about just careers in general, right? That every industry needs, right? That can go across any industry. Do you think that they focus on that because historically Black and brown people have sold weed, right? And so this is their way of righting the wrong, that now it's legal. So we're going to teach you, what has been done in your community. We're going to teach you how to do that legally. Do you think that that's the thought behind that?
It might be the thought behind that, but unpack that statement. Who's going to teach
It's
us?
wrong.
The corporate
Right.
white man that ain't never stood on the corner in his life, or are they talking to who's going to teach that? The federal government, or I mean the state government, right? These people that in downstate in Springfield that again ain't never. I know people in the governor's office.
Mm-hmm.
Some are familiar with cannabis, some are not. But these are the people that are making these laws. So when they say like, oh, we're going to do that, it's almost the type of thing that I heard with the state of Illinois. I mean, when the city of Chicago said, oh, we're going to put these dispensaries in the neighborhood so that you can have a better access to jobs. As if I want to work for them, right? I want to own my own business.
Right.
I don't want to work for these people. So we don't need more people learning how to sell weed. Right. I would put that upon the individual if that is what they want to do. There are one thing I get asked about a lot is how do I get into the cannabis industry? How do I get into the cannabis industry? And my answer to that is whatever you are currently doing professionally in your life, you can apply that to the cannabis industry because the cannabis industry is just that, it is an industry. Right. So there's a lot of things that you can be doing. The supply chain and the ancillary market when it comes to cannabis is humongous. There are so many possibilities and so much opportunity out there that I honestly feel like telling people that they just need to be learning about selling and growing weed. It's honestly it's almost a send off. Right, because another thing that's going to happen that a lot of people don't think about, especially here in Illinois, for the people here that want to talk about they want to be growers and everything. I don't want to begrudge them or tell them that they shouldn't be focused on that. But federal legalization is coming, right? And it may not be here in the next 3 to 4 years. It might not even be here in the next 5 to 10 years, but it is coming. And when it happens, people aren't going to be buying weed grown in Illinois. Because why would you? It's almost like nobody buys wine that was grown in Illinois right now, right? You want wine that was grown in Sonoma or Napa, or you want something that was grown in France where there's people don't want to buy downstate Illinois grown weed. Like it just doesn't make any sense. Right. And so that's almost the same thing. I don't want us to get caught into these trick bags where all of a sudden we're doing something that we spend a lot of energy learning new skills that maybe is not doesn't help us as much as we think that it will in the long run, right? A lot of these things are coming, everything from automation. I have been in grow rooms where robots grow the weed. That is coming, right? That is coming. So again,
everything else, right?
Yes, automation is a real thing, and there is no reason to think that it's not going to happen in the cannabis industry as well. If I had a grow, I would automate it. I would definitely have some growers in there, but I would want to automate it. Why? Because cultivation is not that much of a moneymaker.
Right.
It's not as much of a moneymaker as people think that it is, right? And so people are always looking to cut their costs. One of the ways to cut their costs is to buy robots. And that is a real thing that's happening. I know people are going to hear this. They're going to roll their eyes and going to say, who is going to buy robot? Who's going to smoke or buy robot grown weed? People are doing it today and they don't even know that's what it is. Trust me when I tell you. People do not know that their weed is grown by robots. Okay.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so I just want people to be thinking longer term. Right. So I'll give you an example, like things that you can do in the industry. Right. I will use myself as an example humbly. Right. So for myself, right, I created a marketing. I created a media production company where I create content across the country for different cannabis different cannabis companies. And instead of being a influencer on the more traditional, which people think of, because I do have a large following on social media, but instead of being like an influencer, what I decided to do and the reason I say that is because an influencer is really more where a company will hire you to create content to post on your own page. And then they will want to look at your analytics to see how many people are looking at it, how many people are clicking through and buying stuff. I flipped that on its head. And what I said was, I will create content and I will sell it back to the company.
Mm.
And that for them to post on their own social media pages, so that I am not burdened by having to make sure that they're whatever they wanted me to shoot for them pops, right? I'll post it on my page, but how I make my money is by creating content and then selling it back to the person that hired me to create it, right? That's what I do. And I do the same thing for food and for travel. Companies hire me to come out, I take the pictures, and then I sell them back the content, and then they can do whatever they want to do with it. I don't have to get credit for it. You don't have to use my name. I don't have to my stuff is out there. People have no idea that I did it, right? That's one way. The other way to do it is by another thing that you can do is to create your own brand, which is super, super, super important. Going off of one of the last things that I said about how pretty soon cultivation isn't going to matter as much. What's going to really matter is your brand. Your brand is what's going to matter. In the same way, if you were to go to a grocery store right now, right, and let's say you want soda, you want a pop, right? Whether you realize it or not, your choice is Coke or Pepsi, right? You may think that you have all of these different choices of beverages, but at the end of the day, everything is made by Coke or by Pepsi, even the water, right? I believe Nestle is owned by I think Nestle is owned by Pepsi. Dasani is owned by Coca-Cola, right? Like even the water, people think, oh, I'm going to drink this healthy water. Your water is produced and bottled by Coke or by Pepsi, right? And so what really matters is the brand. The brand is what really matters, because that's a way that you can get on store shelves without having to get a license. How do you do that? You do that by partnering with a large company or partnering with a licensed operator. And if you build a brand and a following, you can then go to the licensed operator and says, hey, I have a brand, I have a large following. Why don't we do a collaboration, put out product underneath you're a licensed grower. We find a licensed retailer that will give us shelf space, and then we can put our products out. I all of a sudden have product on the shelf, and I didn't grow or sell anything. I don't have any licenses, right? Building brands is really the key moving forward in the cannabis industry. All right. So I think it's really, really important doing that. And then you have a lot of other things that you can do, everything from ancillary products like me, one of my brand I mentioned, Cranja Culture. We actually have like these leather rolling trays that are for sale in different dispensaries across the country and online. So that's a product right now that's my brand, Cranja Culture, is actually, I don't talk about it like this, but it's actually the first Black-owned brand in Chicago dispensaries. So there's only one brand, Black-owned brand in Chicago dispensaries right now, and it's my brand, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a rolling tray. It's a rolling tray. It's the only thing you can do, but that is one way you can get in without having to wait on the state to give you permission, right? Mm-hmm. Without having to let any of these large MSOs and play balls with them. We just we created relationships with the dispensary owner who gave us shelf space. That's one thing you can do. And then, like I said, other things like, again, I teach cannabis marketing and branding. That's me being in the industry by teaching other people about the industry. In the same way that a friend of mine, he does a podcast. And I told him recently, he says, oh yeah, I'm really trying to get into the industry. But his whole podcast is about the cannabis industry. And I said, bro, you are in the industry. Right. Now your question is not how do you get into the industry? It's now how do you monetize what you already have? That's the trick, right? Like, yeah, it's how to make money off of your ideas, how to make money off of your products, how to make money with your brand. That's a whole another thing. And another way that I get paid by being a consultant. I help people do that.
That is pretty cool.
So it's a lot of opportunity is my point.
Right.
And we don't have to wait, as terrible as things are, and as much as the odds are against us, we do not need the state's permission to do any of those things that I just said.
Mm-hmm.
Any of these things I've done everything that I've done so far in the cannabis industry without being licensed by the state of Illinois. And so I hope to encourage people to think that I know I said a whole lot of doom and gloom stuff on there, but it's still within your reach and within your power to make it happen, even though the odds are not in our favors. It's just the truth.
Okay. I have one final question. So
Sure.
if I have, a record,
Mm-hmm.
can I a conviction,
Mm-hmm.
or just anything related to marijuana on my record? Does it make it more difficult to get a license? Is that
No, I mean, again, if it's just a cannabis conviction, no, it actually helps the state of Illinois, because the state of Illinois, that was part of the social equity program that they created, was that if you have been convicted of cannabis, that actually is what qualifies you for being a social equity applicant. That is what qualified me. That's how I qualified, by having a conviction in the past. I haven't lived in my old neighborhood, because you have to either live in your old neighborhood 5 out of the last 10 years. I haven't lived there over the last 5 years, or 5 out of the last 10 years, been a little bit longer than that. So the only way that I qualified as social equity now is because of the arrest record that I have. So no, it helps you. But again, what that really means.
because of all the other?
Yeah, and one last thing that I'll touch on as well. One of my biggest pet peeves with what the state did, just complete incompetence. There's no other way to say it, is that it's a social equity license application, right? And the way that you qualify for being social equity is either you were arrested for cannabis and have an arrest or a conviction, or your immediate family member was, or you lived in one of the disproportionately impacted areas for 5 out of the last 10 years, or what I call the loophole is that you employ more than 50% of your employees. I'm sorry, if you are an employer and more than 50% of your employees live in those areas. What does that mean? That means that you can be from way out somewhere. I'm not going to name any of these neighborhoods. I don't want people just getting mad like I singled them out, right? But you could be way somewhere that is not a disproportionately infected area. Find some Black people that live in these areas, or brown people, or white people that live in those areas, right? And say, hey, I'm going to give you a job at a company that doesn't exist. And now all of a sudden, you're a social equity applicant. The state screwed this up so bad. It's no way I cannot overemphasize how bad the state messed this up, right? So I know for a fact there are restaurateurs, people that own restaurants, who are qualified as social equity because they hired some Black people at a mysterious company that, who knows if they even really exist, but they created the company because of the program, right? Because they read the rules. They're like, oh, okay, I need to have the majority of the people that work for me at this company be Black people. So let me hire some Black people and then apply a social equity. What?
Right.
Right? Makes no sense. And then the other thing that the state did, which was really just horrible, was that they included at the very last minute this weird clause that, in addition to qualifying those other 3 ways, that the only way to get a perfect score the only way to get 100% of the available points on the application is if your company is owned and controlled. If 51% of your company is owned and controlled by a veteran. Now, my father was a Marine. He would say is a Marine. Once a Marine, always a Marine. Right. Uncles are in the military. I have active duty cousins and friends. I have nothing against the military, right? Nothing. But the state did not identify social equity as people who were in the military, nor did the state say that the only way that you qualify as social equity is 51% of your company is owned or controlled by a veteran. But that is the way the rules are written for the scores. So this is one of the reasons that the applications and the licenses have been held up by the state. It's currently going through the court system right now. I think the state is actually going to move forward with those licenses, which is one of the biggest travesties it's disgusting, right? And again, it's nothing against the vets, but to give out 75 licenses to people just because their companies are owned by veterans makes absolutely no sense at all. Makes zero sense at all. And again, that is the state doing that, right? 12% of the Black population are veterans. 12%. 1% of the U.S. population. 1% of the U.S. population are veterans. 1%. How do you give 100% of the licenses to veterans and then say that's social equity? It just, it makes no sense at all. And so these are just some of the issues that I know people are dealing with right now, myself included. You could hear it in my voice. It's just one of those things where I am beyond irritated by that. And like I said, one of the reasons why I've been trying for over a year now to put a good face on it and to hope for the best things. But as the days go on and I listen to more and more of the excuses that the state has put out, I have less and less faith in them doing the right thing, to be honest. And so, which is why it's so important that I encourage everyone out here that is listening to this to take matters into your own hand, much in the same way when we talked about the very beginning, when you said, how did the cannabis conviction stop me, right? I didn't know if it was stopping me, but I knew very earlier that I wanted to have control over my own destiny. So I started doing things on my own, entrepreneurship. I take the same approach with cannabis. I do not think they're going to give me anything. I have a chance for a license. I don't necessarily know if I'm going to get it because I'm not a veteran, and I am the majority owner of my company, even though I'm partnered with this large multi-billion-dollar company that has all the product and has all the expertise, and I have all the expertise. For whatever reason, that doesn't matter to the state because I'm not a veteran. Mm-hmm. Right? For whatever reason, that means I can't get a license, right? But so what I have done is everything that I told you before to get myself into the industry. So I'm not gonna let the state stop me from doing my business. The same way I wasn't gonna let that cannabis conviction stop me from doing anything I want to do either.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you for letting. I'm sorry if I was a little long with it. I appreciate.
That's okay. That's okay. It's good information. It's good.
Thank you. I hope it's actionable as well, and somebody can do something with it.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right.